whatever you're going to do, and then we'll have Andrew call the roll.
Okay.
And
Stream is
Andrew,
live.
I also have something to say during the after the roll call. So,
Okay, very good.
Mr. Chair, we do looks like we have a quorum, so please start the meeting and take roll.
All right. I'm now calling the October 27th meeting of the MAG Population Technical Advisory Committee to order. I believe this may be the first meeting, maybe the second, that we've had since I've been chair. We have had to cancel a number of them, but I'm very happy to see everyone here participating by Zoom. It's good to see everyone. So first, we will go ahead and call the roll. See who's here on the record. Tracy Clark from ADOT. Sydney Urias from Apache Junction. Michelle Samerdia from Avondale.
Present.
Thank you. Andrea Marquez, Buckeye. Stacy Bridge Denzak, Carefree.
Here.
Thank you. Luke Kotzman, Cave Creek. Sam Andrea Chandler. Crystal Dikis, El Mirage.
Present.
Thank you. Victor Cantu, Florence. Farhad Tavasoli, Fountain Hills.
Present.
Thank you. Kyle Mieres, Gilbert. Alex Lerma, Glendale. Christian Williams, Goodyear. Sonny Culbreth, Litchfield Park. Rodolfo Lopez, Maricopa.
Mr. Chair, let the record show Christian Williams is giving a thumbs up. He is in attendance.
Very good, thank you.
Victor Cantu is as well.
Okay, very good. I'm sorry, Rodolfo, you said present?
Yes, I'm here.
Very good. Matt Holm or Rachel Applegate, Maricopa County.
Rachel Applegate for Matt Holm.
Thank you. Wahid Alam, Mesa. Paul Michaud, Paradise Valley.
Present.
Jennifer Faustino, Peoria. Adam Miller, Phoenix. Tara Harmon, Pinal County. Sarah Clark, oh, yes.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. Called Adam Miller. It looks like we have Dave Miller, who is a proxy for Adam. Is that correct?
Dave Miller, proxy for Adam Miller. Okay, got it. Tara Harmon, Pinal County. Sarah Clark, Queen Creek.
Here.
Thank you. Brian Myers from Salt River. Taylor Reynolds or Adam Yaron, Scottsdale.
Yeah, this is Adam Yaron, sitting as proxy for Taylor Reynolds.
Thank you, Adam. Lloyd Abrams, Surprise. I am here for Tempe, Andrew Ching. Ben Davidson, Valley Metro. Davis Kofenauer, Wickenburg.
Here.
Gregory Arrington, Youngtown. Very good. So it appears we have quorum then, and we have completed the roll.
And I also wanted to note for the record that from MAG staff, we have, I'm Scott Wilkin. We also have Mary Holmgren, Maggie Wong, Sarah Kent, Scott Bridwell, Peter Burnett, Jason Howard, David Worley, Jesse Ayers, Kurt Kottner, Annabelle Bagley. And we also wanted to introduce our newest interns, Sandra Childers. Sandra is working in the socioec group within our division. She's currently studying urban and regional planning at ASU. she's mostly doing data review for us. She's doing an amazing job. And I think she is somebody we're really lucky to have right now. She said that she's graduating with her bachelor's in planning in May, master's a year from this May. And anybody out there who is involved in hiring for a planning department, she wants to be a city planner. I mean, I'd love if we could keep her, but if she's looking for a planning job in the near future, we would highly recommend her. So be on the lookout. She's gonna do some good things.
Thank you, Scott, and I appreciate all the MAG staff who are here today. Thank you. Next on the agenda, item 2, called the audience. An opportunity will be provided to members of the public to address the MAG PopTac, Population Technical Advisory Committee, on items not scheduled on the agenda that fall under the jurisdiction of MAG, or on items on the agenda for discussion but not for action. Members of the public will be requested to limit their comments to 3 minutes. A total of 15 minutes will be provided for this agenda item, unless the chair of PopTac provides an exception. Those wishing to comment on agenda action items will be given an opportunity at the time that item is heard. Are there any members of the audience who have submitted to speak for today?
We do not have any requests to speak, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Is there anyone there who is a member of the audience or the public who has not otherwise been called who would like to speak? Hearing none, we will move on to item 3, approval of the meeting minutes of November 5th, 2019. Hopefully you have all had a chance to review those meeting minutes. If so, do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion made. Is there a second?
I'll second it. This is Paul Michaud from Paradise Valley.
Is that Crystal making the motion?
Crystal moved and Paul seconded. Thank you. Scott, do you want to do a roll call vote, or how do you want to do
Yes.
the? Okay.
Please do a roll call vote.
Okay. Very good.
I can read off just the names of the people who are here if you'd like.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. It looks like Tracy Clark just joined us. So start with Tracy.
Okay. Tracy Clark.
Actually, let's come back to Tracy. His audio is still connecting.
Okay.
Michelle Simerdla.
Yay.
Stacy Bridget Enzak.
Yes.
Crystal Dykes.
Aye.
Victor Cantu.
Aye.
Farhad Tavasoli.
Aye.
Christian Williams. I'm seeing a thumbs up from Christian. Rudy Lopez.
Yay.
Rachel Applegate.
Yes.
Paul Michaud.
Aye.
Dave Miller. Okay. Where are we? Sarah Clark.
Aye.
Adam Yaron.
Aye.
Andrew Ching.
Aye.
And Davis Conauer.
Aye.
Anybody that I didn't call? Okay, motion passes. And looks like we're getting Jennifer Faustino from Peoria joining us as well. David, if you're still with us, we seem to be having a problem with Dave Miller's audio. Unless
He
that's
just
him.
unmuted himself.
Okay. And Tracy Clark's audio may have disconnected too. Okay. Sorry, Mr. Chair.
I'm here.
Hello, Tracy.
Thanks.
And hello, Jennifer. Mr. Chair, we can move on to the next item.
Hi.
Very good. Thank you. Our next item is item number 4, the presentation of the draft July 1st, 2020 municipality resident population updates and methodology. I believe Scott Bridewell is here to present on behalf of MAG staff. Yes.
Sorry about that.
Oh, no
hello,
worries.
Mr. Okay. Let's see. Let me see if I can share my screen here. Are you guys seeing my PowerPoint here?
We're seeing your PowerPoint and all of the slides.
Okay.
Yes, we're seeing it. Thank you.
Okay. Is it in presentation mode now?
No.
Not quite.
How about now?
Now it's in presenter mode.
It looks like you have it set up for 2 screens, and it's just showing the presenter screen.
Oh, okay. Let's see if I get that. Okay. How do I do this?
There we go.
Okay, sorry about that.
Sorry.
Okay, so thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. This is the annual population update. I will direct you to attachment 1 in your agenda packet. Within the attachment, there's a detailed breakdown of the various components of the population update, as well as a description of the methodology that's being applied. So this is something that we do every year about this time. For those of you who have been on PopTech for a while, there really shouldn't be any surprises or major differences this year. This is really just a continuation of basically the same methodology that we've been applying over the last few years. So what we do is we develop these estimates at the jurisdiction level in coordination with the Arizona Office of Economic Opportunity. That's Jim Chang, the state demographer. And they typically develop county level and also state level estimates that we apply. And we're also doing this in coordination with CAG, the Central Arizona Association of Governments, who work on behalf of their member agencies, which are in Pinal County, but which are not a member of MAG. So the applications that we tend to use these for are sort of miscellaneous. The big one that we do that's sort of formalized is expenditure limits for home rule. So that's something that we provide. Then we also use this to do a lot of different kind of analytic efforts internally, both within the regional analytics group and also within the transportation group, air quality. And then we also can support various member agency requests that come up throughout the year. Now, the one thing that's a little bit different this year is that in a way, these are sort of a placeholder and sort of a formality, because when the Census 2020 results come out, I believe that's sometime in the spring or maybe early summer, then these will essentially be replaced by whatever those are. And we'll redo these estimates to reflect that. So in terms of what is actually being provided to you guys in terms of an action item to adopt, we develop estimates for both Maricopa and Pinal counties, but the only things that would actually get adopted are the MAG member agencies. So in terms of the methodology, it's essentially a two-stage approach wherein there are first estimates that are compiled at the county level using what's called the composite method. And so that's developed primarily by the state demographer with some input from MAG and also other COGs through the Council of Technical Solutions. And within this methodology, the goal is to capture each cohort or divide the population into various cohorts and then use different types of administrative records to track changes in those components over time. And so basically these get broken down into ages under 5. So that's based on births and deaths data. The next component is for ages 5 through 17, and typically that's tracked with school enrollment from ADE. Then the big component is 18 to 64. This is based on active driver's licenses from MVD. And then for 65 plus, they tend to use a combination of Social Security and also Medicare enrollment. In addition to this, we also collect various group quarters data based on things like prisons and dorms, nursing homes, and those are tracked at that level as well. So once we have a county level total, and so we would have a separate county total for Maricopa and for Pinal counties. And so those are then distributed to the jurisdiction level based on what we call the housing unit method. And what we basically do here is start with a base population or base set of residential units. And from that, we basically have measures of occupancy in terms of persons per household, occupancy rates. And we then update our inventories of residential units and apply those occupancy characteristics to try and get at the actual total population. And once we have that, the total population from the HUM will not match the county level population that's provided by the state demographer. And so those results are basically benched proportionally to what the original housing unit method had allocated so that the totals all match up. Like I mentioned, this is really a continuation of a methodology that we've been applying for about 3 or 4 years. The one hiccup that's a little bit different from what typically would be done is that we had the special census that got done in 2015. And that special census was only done for five members within Maricopa County. And so what that basically does is it kind of messes up the benching mechanism. So in order to do this, we basically took and we did an estimate for 2015. And then we took that estimate from 2015 and we modified it so that it reflected the special census results. So essentially the cities that had special censi, they got their special census result, and everybody else basically took on the remainder of the county level control total. So we assume the county level was the same, but the jurisdictional level estimates are different. And then what we then use is then instead of using the census 2010 as a base, we use the 2015 as a base and then apply the same housing unit method going forward. One thing that's a little bit different also about this year is that in terms of the timeline that we're required to do to get these through the adoption process, we have to begin this before we actually have a final result from the state demographer's office. And so in this year, the state demographer is still awaiting, I believe he's still awaiting or looking at the MVD analysis, and then also looking at some of the different issues within the school enrollment data. And so what we have here is a preliminary county estimate that is essentially based on the trends over the last few years. And so what you see here are basically the charts for Pinal and Maricopa County, and those are the estimates from 2010 to 2020. And so while the estimate that we have here that's within this draft could potentially change, we feel like it's in line with the stuff that's been adopted in previous years. And so with that, the action that we're requesting is to recommend approval of the draft July 1, 2020 municipality resident population updates for MAG member agencies, provided that the MAG region control total is within 2% of the final control total. That's all I have for you. Let me know if you have any questions or comments.
Thank you, Scott. Are there any questions from anyone on the board committee? Hearing no
Scott, can you-
question. Go ahead.
Sorry. Scott, can you leave your presentation up, but go back to the next to last slide?
Let's see. Hopefully I didn't mess that up. Can you still see it?
That's good.
Okay.
Thanks.
This is Adam from the city of Scottsdale. Can you explain, I guess, the question or the concern regarding the ADE enrollment numbers at this point in time?
The AD enrollment numbers, I believe there were some inconsistencies in the numbers that they were looking at. And so they were looking at an alternative measure, which I think is the ADM, which is the average daily measure. It's a different measure than they typically would use, which is typically the October 1st enrollment from the previous year. So they're kind of sorting through that right now.
Any other questions? Okay. Hearing no other questions, this is an action item on the agenda. Is there a motion on the item?
I'll move to recommend approval of the draft July 1st, 2020 municipality resident population updates as presented.
Thank you, Crystal. Moves to approve. Is there a second?
I
This
second.
is Farhad at the town of Fountain Hills. I'll second the approval.
I believe Jennifer beat you out just by a second there on the second.
Oh, okay.
No worries. Okay. Scott, if you could assist me by calling roll again, and we can ask for everyone's voice vote, please.
Yes, please. I will. Tracy Clark. Michelle Smerdla.
Aye.
Stacy Bridge Denzak.
Yes.
Crystal Dykes.
Aye.
Victor Cantu.
Aye.
Farhad Tavasoli.
Aye.
Kyle Muris.
Aye.
Christian Williams is giving me a thumbs up. Rudy Lopez.
Aye.
Rachel Applegate.
Aye.
Paul Michaud.
Aye.
Jennifer Faustino.
Aye.
Dave Miller.
Yes.
Sarah Clark.
Aye.
Adam Yaron.
Aye.
Andrew Ching.
Aye.
Davis Konauer.
Aye.
And we'll ask for Tracy Clark one more time.
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that, and thank you for the presentation. We'll now move on to item 5, homelessness and housing affordability. This is a report on the results of the annual point-in-time homeless count, as well as analysis of current data sets on homeless data and housing affordability. Maggie Wong and Sarah Kent.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you all see the presentation?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. So good morning, everybody. My name is Maggie Wong. I'm a research analyst with MAG. I'll be presenting with my colleague, Sarah Kent. So I'm going to turn it over to her to introduce herself and get us started.
Thank you so much, Maggie, and thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the Population Technical Advisory Committee. As Maggie said, my name is Sarah Kent, and I'm a Human Services Planner for MAG and the Maricopa Regional Continuum of Care. Next slide, please. Thank you. So the point-in-time homeless count is an annual street and shelter count that determines the number of people experiencing homelessness in Maricopa County during a given point in time. And the point in time that I'm referring to was January 28th of 2020. Next slide, please. So why is this important? The point-in-time homeless count, or as we call it, the PIC count, is an important source of data on homelessness and is reported to Congress as part of the Annual Homelessness Assessment Report, or the AHAR. So the PIC count is a primary source of unsheltered homeless numbers and helps to inform communities on the number of people who do not access services such as emergency shelters, transitional housing, or safe haven programs at any point in time. Within our region, we're seeing a dramatic rental increase, therefore causing an increase in evictions that leads to an increase in homelessness. Next slide, please. The point-in-time homeless count marks a substantial increase of 10% over last year. So there's a steady increase in homelessness in Maricopa County, and with the eviction rates being one of the highest in the nation, as well as affordable permanent housing decreasing, our county is simply not keeping up with the impending crisis that is homelessness. Next slide, please. So you can see here, these are the 2019 numbers. And as you all know, Maricopa County covers 9,224 square miles, comprises over 24 municipalities. And then we'll see the next slide, please, is the growth rate from 2019 to now 2020. Next slide, please. So So as far as sheltered and unsheltered, you can see that 49% of folks who were surveyed during the PIT count were in emergency shelter, transitional housing, or safe haven programs, whereas 51% were unsheltered on the streets or other places not meant for human habitation. Next slide, please. Perhaps more troubling is the fact that for the first time, the number of people on the streets, which is 3,767, surpassed the number of people in the shelters, which you can see is 3,652. The unsheltered population grew by 18% compared to 2019. Next slide, please. 61% of the population experiencing homelessness identified as male, 39% identified as female, and less than 1% identified as either transgender or gender nonconforming. Although we know that transgender and gender nonconforming folks are historically overrepresented in the homeless system. Next slide, please. Over the years, ethnic breakdown of the PIT count has remained pretty much the same, with significant majority identifying as non-Hispanic or non-Latino. By race, there's been a slight increase in the white population and the Black or African American population, and a slight decrease in multiple races. Even though non-white folks appear to be a smaller percentage than their white peers, rather, Black and brown folks are historically overrepresented within the homeless system. The Maricopa Regional Continuum of Care, or the COC, is in the process of working with racial equity consultants to address these disparities. Next slide, please. The largest age group from the PIT count is adults ages 25 and up, which accounted for 76% of the 2020 PIT population. Children ages 0 to 17 make up 17% of the population, while youth ages 18 to 24 make up only 7% of the count. Next slide, please. These here are the special populations, and you can see that families are the only population that has decreased slightly. Of significant note is the chronically homeless population that has significantly increased over the years. From 2015 to 2020, the total number of chronically homeless folks has increased by 119%. Next slide, please. PIT count also collects information on other subpopulations based on self-reported voluntary responses that you can see here. Next slide, please. The overall unsheltered count for Maricopa County region has been increasing each year. The number of people experiencing unsheltered homelessness in the subregion has also been increasing annually, with the majority of unsheltered population concentrated in Central Phoenix. You can see here in sort of that green color. The top section in the tealish turquoise represents the West Valley, and the East Valley cities are in purple. So the numbers demonstrate the need for more permanent, affordable housing. Next slide, please. PIT count volunteers use either the paper survey forms or mobile app to submit electronic surveys for each person that they encounter. This year, significantly more surveys were submitted through the mobile app because it was so much easier than using the paper surveys. The shelter count comes from the region's HMIS, or the Homeless Management Information System, and service providers surveys to verify the number of beds and occupancy rates for each program. MAG's Regional Analytics Division also created a live dashboard so that teams could see the count in real time, which is extra helpful for homeless outreach teams. Next slide, please. You can see here that the point in time count had a lot of media coverage, as far as, Telemundo, AZ Central, Cronkite News, even Vice News. Next slide, please. And of course, one thing to take away from this is that homelessness is solvable. And we know that housing solves homelessness, so we can solve the crisis by creating space to break down the barriers and stigmas. We also want to give a special thanks to the folks who gave their time, who were experiencing homelessness, to answer those survey questions. And of course, a special thanks to MAG's Regional Analytics Division that does so much wonderful work for the point in time count for us, as well as all these beautiful graphics, the dashboard, and it just goes on and on. And so that is my presentation, and I will toss it over to Maggie for the next step. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. So that was the point in time count. That's a one-night annual snapshot, and I'm going to be walking us through some other data we have on homelessness, as well as housing trends and affordability in the region. So besides the one-night snapshot, we do have ongoing data collection in the Homeless Management Information System, HMIS. That's the database that service providers use to track client records and services accessed. And we have an ongoing partnership with Crisis Response Network, which is the HMIS administrator, to regularly receive 2 reports. So the first one is a weekly shelter report, and that tells us all clients who accessed emergency shelter, transitional housing, or any safe haven programs in a week. The second report we receive daily, actually, are outreach coordinates data. So every time an outreach worker goes to the streets and meets with a client, we ask them to record and submit the latitude and longitude of those encounters. We map those and use it for service coordination. The hope is that outreach workers are able to find clients they're looking for by looking at places they might frequent, and that this mapping also helps with coverage of the region for outreach. It's important to note that there is overlap between the 2 reports, so a client may show up in both, because they may access multiple homeless services, including both shelter and outreach. So we'll start by looking at the weekly shelter reports. This chart just shows the weekly totals of clients served in shelter services since March. So you can see there's been a slight increase of about 18%, with the most recent report for the week of October 9th showing a total of 3,435 clients accessing shelter. And we do want to note that we haven't had a chance yet to do a historical analysis looking at the same time period last year, so we're not sure if this increase is a seasonal trend or something that may have been impacted by the pandemic. But diving into that most recent weekly report, we compared it to the Census Bureau's population estimates for Maricopa County just to see how demographics compare. And we found that shelters have a higher proportion of males and adults 25 to 59 years old than the overall county population estimates. And these charts here just show that comparison, with the green representing shelter data and the blue representing Maricopa County. It gets more interesting when we start looking at race. Shelters have a higher percent of minorities than the overall county population. So 42% of clients accessing shelter are non-white, whereas in the overall population, only 14% of people are non-white. And this is especially apparent when you look at Black or African American. They make up 34% of the shelter population, but only 6% of the overall county population. So that's something we're definitely keeping an eye on. And in terms of ethnicity, shelters report a slightly lower percentage of folks identifying as Hispanic or Latino compared to county estimates. Some additional data points from these weekly shelter reports that we find interesting are here. So the first one is that 38% of clients reported April 2020 or later as the date their homelessness began. So that means that over a third of clients in shelter that week became homeless during the pandemic. 26% of adults 18 years or older are experiencing chronic homelessness, which Sarah also mentioned earlier with the PIT count. The HUD definition for chronic homelessness is that the client must have a disabling condition and also have experienced homelessness for at least a year or repeatedly over a few years. And 11% of the adults accessing shelters are veterans. So 285 clients were veterans who accessed shelters that week. We also asked clients to self-report their primary reasons for homelessness, and we really want to highlight these top 3. So 21% of clients in shelter reported an economic reason as why they're homeless, followed by 15% reporting evictions as the reason, and 14% saying it was family disputes or overcrowding. This is a data field we do want to keep an eye on. We're really curious to see if these percentages go up due to impacts from the pandemic. As I mentioned before, the second data that we get is outreach coordinates data. So this map here is a concentration map showing all outreach encounters from September 2019 to September 2020. So in total, outreach workers encountered clients 11,584 times in the last year, but clients may be encountered multiple times. So when we deduplicate that to a unique client count, outreach served 5,652 clients. And what this map is really showing is that although there are some hotspots in the major cities, homelessness is widespread across the region, similar to the maps we were looking at earlier with the unsheltered PIT count. So moving on to housing trends in the region, we'll start with the median sales price, which has been pretty steadily increasing. So in the Phoenix metro area in the last year, there's been a 16.9% increase in median housing sales price. This chart breaks it down by county. So if we look at that darker blue, in September of 2019, Maricopa County had a median sales price of $288,000, but as of last month, it's already $335,000. We also mapped the sales price changes by zip code, which you can see here. There are a few spots that are this goldenrod yellow, showing a slight decline in the sales price. But when we looked into this, it's primarily due to unit type change. So going from single family homes to multifamily units or condos. But as you can see, most of the map is green, and all shades of green show an increase in sales price change across the region, with the darkest green showing an increase greater than 25%. Along the same lines, this chart is showing sales transactions with the different colors representing different price bins. If we focus on this darker blue at the bottom, that represents sales transactions that are under 200,000. And we see that that has really decreased over 60% in the past 10 years. Similarly, when we look at apartment units and rent, the availability of units with rent under $1,000 has increased significantly in the past 10 years as well. So if you look at the light green here, that represents units that are $500 to $1,000 a month. And then the dark blue, which is units that are under $500 for rent, those have virtually disappeared in recent years. Going into housing affordability, we use data from the census to look at housing costs and income. About 30% of households in our region, so that's 478,000 households, are paying more than a third of their income on housing. And so this map is showing the percent of households paying more than 30% of their income on housing costs. The areas in this dark red are where over 45% of households in that area are paying more than a third of their income on housing. And this is pretty concerning that 87% of these households have an income below $60,000 a year, and 50% are single worker households. So these households may be especially vulnerable to changes in the economy, housing market, and even potential evictions. This next map continues that same analysis, but instead of just spending 30% or more of their income on housing costs, this is showing the most vulnerable households who are spending more than half of their income on housing expenses. On this map, the darkest red is showing areas where more than 35% of households are spending over half their income on housing. Again, it's concerning that 96% of households have an income below $60,000, so below median income, and 46% are single worker households. So those two maps focus on where people live, but we're also able to look at data on where people live and work using data from the Travel Reduction Program survey, and also using data from our employer database in partnership with member agencies. We've identified about 150 major employment centers in the county, which are shown in blue on this map. And these make up 70% of all jobs in the region. So looking at these job centers as where people work, this map shows the percent of workers in each job center with an income less than $60,000 who are spending over a third of their income on housing expenses. So the areas in yellow, orange, and red show where lower income workers are spending more than 30%. More than half of the lower income workers in those job centers are spending over a third of their income on housing expenses. So it's pretty concerning that there is so little green on this map. Across the county, low income workers are going to be really vulnerable to changes in the economy and housing. Another piece on housing we're looking at is data from the Maricopa County Justice Courts on evictions. And you can see that evictions are at about half of what they were last year, with just under 3,000 last month in September, compared to September of 2019 when there were over 6,000 evictions. And you can see that decline really began in March with the pandemic. Arizona had an eviction moratorium begin, protecting people from having to pay their full rent and being evicted. And while we see that it's kind of dipped down and then started to increase again. There's also been federal eviction moratoriums set in place through the end of the year to protect folks who might be vulnerable to that. The key question here is what is going to happen when these moratoriums end? We're concerned that there is a pent-up demand for future evictions, and with rising housing and rental prices, we may see a big increase in evictions and potentially homelessness as well across the region. We also mapped evictions by zip code. So on the left, this map shows evictions from last year in 2019. There were a total of over 68,000 evictions. And on this map, the darker orange and red show areas with higher concentration of evictions. On the right is evictions this year through September. You can see that the difference is pretty clear. There are significantly less evictions. And again, we're worried about what this map may look at the start of next year when the moratoriums end. Finally, we also did an analysis of evictions by the area's household income, and we found that 77% of evictions are in areas with less than median income, so under $60,000. So that's what we have on homelessness and housing affordability. We are continuing to keep an eye on all these trends and look into additional analysis as well. As mentioned before, the overall major concern is that with rising sales and rental prices and a decline in affordable units, when eviction moratoriums expire at the end of this year, this could significantly impact homelessness in the region, as well as the economy and housing market. So you can see on this last slide, we have some links to additional resources, as well as contact information for Sarah and I. But that concludes our presentation. Thank you all very much.
Thank you both very much for your very detailed and informative presentations. I really appreciate it. As someone who had the opportunity to participate in the pit count this past January, I can attest to the ease of the use of the app. Made our lives a lot easier that morning in being able to upload the information immediately. And really appreciate all the work that you have done and that MAG has done with regards to studying the homelessness. And I especially would say that drawing attention to what could be starting at the beginning of 2021, an impending housing and eviction crisis will only help us to be more prepared for it when and if it comes. So with that, I would turn it over to the rest of the group for any questions you may have. Anyone? Hearing no questions. Again, thank you. I believe, Scott, this was for information only today.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay. We have now we're moving on to item 6 on our agenda, data analytics update. First, item 6A. Jesse Ayers will be presenting on movers data. Are you ready for that?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the PopTech. Can everybody hear me okay and see the presentation?
Yes.
Yes.
Very good. So I get the pleasure of getting to introduce some new data sets that we've been working with pretty much since the start of the pandemic. Amongst a lot of things that have happened since, March 15th or so, a lot of companies and places have kind of come out publicly with their data, sometimes offering it for free, just to do whatever we can to help understand what's happening with the pandemic, how people are recovering, how they're suffering, what they're doing, all these things. So I get to introduce some data along these lines and some analysis that goes with it. First of all, we have some data from Info Group, Data Axle, I guess is their new name, which is a data set of new movers. We also have been in contact with AZDES, and we're getting unemployment data by zip code, which is kind of novel. And then we've also partnered with a firm called SafeGraph, which gives us access to anonymized cell phone data and the patterns that result from that. So it's interesting that it's been really fun to do this. We're getting a lot more spatial and attribute resolution lot higher frequency, but at the same time, we have to learn how to deal with hundreds of gigabytes of data at the same time. And it's definitely pushing our resources. If it gets much more, we might have to get into the cloud-based big data thing. So I'm trying to move this. I'm trying to make this. There we go. Okay, first up is the new movers data from InfoGroup. So this is a data set that has a record for every move into or out of our MSA for the year between those dates, basically May to May, 19 to 20. And so InfoGroup puts this together not from Postal Service change of address things, but their own internal sources, which are numerous. Things that people definitely do when they move. They change their address for their credit cards and things like that. New phone connections, all these things go into this. So we get things like the move date, exactly where they came from in most cases, like their last address and their new address. So it's really, really detailed. We don't get a lot of attribute data along with this, like who they are. Unfortunately, we don't know how many people move with each of these moves because they represent household moves. But we can perhaps explore deriving some attributes since we have such detailed location data in the future using things like the Census ACS. So on to some of the data. Start out with interstate moves. So people who are moving out of the state or into the state, specifically the MSA. So the bottom line really is over here on the right-hand side, the net of total moves, because we send people to California and they send people to us. But we have a pretty big net gain of 6,100 moves, 6,200 moves in that year. And going on down the line, it's really the usual suspects that I think if anybody's looked at migration data, these are very, very common states that all these folks come from. And then conversely, down at the very bottom of the table, we actually lost a few moves to Texas and Kentucky and a few others, but kind of minor numbers. So that's what those look like. I have a map to go with this as well. And this is done by county, so we can kind of see spatially where everyone is coming from. It's interesting to note that people moved to our MSA from 78% of all counties in the United States, which is a lot. That's a lot of counties, including 15 counties in Alaska and at least one in Hawaii. So it's definitely interesting to see. Going down to intrastate moves, so moves that are just occurring within the state of Arizona, these tend to dwarf all the other moves, especially the moves that occur just within the MSA. So this table here, again, this is the net of total moves. Over on the right is really the bottom line. And Pima County is sending us more than we're losing to them. We're gaining almost 450 moves. And then we're losing to Yavapai and Navajo counties, interestingly. So it's kind of an interesting pattern. I suspect, I have to wonder, this is really an experimental data set with them, and we're just exploring it too. And there could be things in here like people buying a vacation home or something like that, and maybe we didn't actually lose them. Maybe they just bought a second house. So it'd be interesting to find out more detail about these numbers. Over here on the left is just a little map that shows there's little tiny blue points on it. That's actually where the people moved from that moved into the MSA. So it is extremely detailed. Moving on to the second topic, unemployment filings by zip code from AZDES. So they're sending us initial unemployment claims, which is just the initial application, which is a very good leading indicator of what's happening in employment. We're also getting ongoing benefits paid every week as well. And we're getting this for every zip code in Arizona approximately monthly. And so there's been a number of extended programs that have happened. You've got the pandemic unemployment insurance. Things have been extended. There's been an executive order that has extended things. Bottom line is, it's been a humongous infusion of money into the Arizona economy. $11 billion to date, or more than $11 billion to date, which is a huge percentage of the overall income that you would normally expect to get. So I'm pretty certain it's making a big difference. So what we have here is a map that has, what we have is the total percent, this is as a percent of the civilian labor force. So within this zip code, you're going to have a population, but only half of those are in the labor force. So this is unemployment insurance claims as a percent of those that would like to be employed, at least, that consider themselves in the labor force. So you can see it occurs everywhere. There's really no area that's immune to this. There's just no question about it. And in total, we've served, the state has served 815,000 initial claims over time, and just in the most recent month, 122,000 different individuals received benefits just in the last month. And this is another look at this from a slightly different source called tracktherecovery.org. And I put this in here just to show that the job losses don't affect everyone equally. I think that's clear. And this really shows it in color, I suppose. This blue line represents the low wage earners, and you can see the huge dip that those folks have taken in their jobs. It's just not equal at all. So that's just there. And the final data set, this is from SafeGraph. And we are using the weekly visit patterns. So SafeGraph data, again, it's anonymized mobile phone location data. And they buy, literally they buy location data from app makers, the people who make apps for our phones. They're collecting our information if we're not preventing that. And these companies, they purchase that information and then they process it and add value to it and then sell it. In this case, we're getting this for free for a year due to the pandemic, and SafeGraph has opened up to any researchers or academics or governments. Their data, just opened it all up and said, have at it as long as you're doing COVID-related work. You can do this for a year. So the data set of interest here is called their weekly visits. So every week they are recording where people are going. And all these blue dots that you see here are SafeGraph points of interest. And they basically represent some place we might go spend money. We might show up at a doctor's office or a retail store or a restaurant or almost anything like that. And it actually has quite a bit more than that too. There's stuff like nursing homes in it and various things. But it's not a complete employer database like the MAG employer database, just points of interest. And these points of interest are linked to the visitors every week. So every week we get a new snapshot of where people are visiting and what they're doing. So one thing that's interesting is that this is during the week of March 30th. So a couple weeks or so after the shutdown orders came in. And these represent block groups, the polygons do. And this is the share of phones that never left their home block group. So the red ones are the ones that, up to 21% of them didn't leave the block group. But the darker blue ones, there's a fair amount in South Tempe and various places scattered everywhere of, up to 60% of the people never left their block group, which is pretty amazing from a social distancing perspective. People were definitely locking down at that point. And this isn't a larger look that I just got this updated. These are the types of points of interest that people are visiting, so just in general. And these percentages are compared to the same week last year. So for the week of October 12th, compared to the week of October 12th, 2019, people are visiting auto dealers at a rate of 89% of last year. So it's almost there. We're visiting gas stations more than we were a year ago. And same with home improvement stores. And actually that's a trend across the entire pandemic, is this home improvement stores saw increases over what they had been in the previous year. And so you get the point here. A lot of things are getting pretty close to where they were a year ago in terms of our shopping and consuming. And this is the last slide. This is actually a screenshot of an interactive chart that we have on our website. And with that, you can see for those various ones that I just showed you, those industry sectors, you can see per sector exactly how they dipped and where they went. So this yellow one is your hotels and motels, really just took a horrible dive. But here's your home improvement stores and your gas stations are mostly staying pretty much above the line a lot. So it's definitely check this out. There's There's 3 more of these, or 2 more of these. It's set up by NAICS codes, and it also shows data for the state and the MSA as well. So it's definitely worth checking out and browsing through. And you can hover on these and get the data points will pop up, and it's really nice and interactive. So definitely check that out. And I'd be happy to take any questions from anybody on the committee. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Chair, before we take questions, I just wanted to highlight that Jesse has these 2 URLs on this last slide, data.azmag.gov and maps.azmag.gov. Those last 2 points that he talked about, you can get to through data.azmag.gov. The first one, the infographic, info group stuff, I imagine we'll add that at some point. I don't think we have yet, but those are our 2 main places where you can get to the data that we have, and the safe graph stuff and the unemployment maps you can find pretty easily through data.azmag.gov.
Very good. Thank you for that. Thank you for the presentation. Very interesting. Are there any questions from the committee? All right.
Okay.
Hearing no questions. Again, appreciate it.
Thank you very much, everybody.
We will turn to, let's see. Looks like we handled 6A, 6B, and 6C all together. Great. We will now turn to item 7 on the agenda, Real Estate Explorer, a new online real estate data tool. Kurt Kottner.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I'm Kurt Kottner. I'm a GIS analyst with the RAD division at MAG. I'm going to share my screen momentarily here.
While Kurt's pulling this up, I should also mention that what he's about to show you, you can also get to through data.azmag.gov. Really is an amazing website.
Okay, can everybody see this?
Yes. Yes. We can.
Okay, thank you. All right, yeah, so this is the Phoenix Metro Residential Real Estate Data Explorer. It's an interactive tool providing high-level analysis of real estate trends across both Maricopa and Pinal County. The goal here was basically we had some really rich data sets on a variety of topics, including property and transaction and construction, that we were using internally for a number of things, but hadn't really tapped into them in a way that presented them in easily digestible format to the public. And so this hopefully represents that. So I'll just get started. You see here across the top, there's multiple tabs, and these are kind of the different sections of the tool and the different areas we explored here. But the first one appropriately is at a glance. And this is essentially a guided story map that just presents some key metro area insights. And it's also sort of an introduction at a high level into each of the next sections where you can explore things much more interactively by county or city or zip code in your neighborhood. So the first section here, we look at housing stock. And so you can see in this map here, it correlates with the chart on the right. And just some basic numbers here. We have a little under 2 million housing units across the metro area as of 2019. Most of them are single family. And you can kind of see the footprint here. So this represents existing housing stock. So these are homes that are still here today. So things close to downtown that maybe were historic properties that were torn down and rebuilt aren't represented in the previous decades. But the key takeaway here is you can really see the huge influx, the number of units produced in the 2000s, record breaking, and in the last decade, big drop off, as we all kind of know, but you can also see over time, looking at the footprint of the region, how we've expanded outwards into newer periphery communities. Another interesting takeaway here, I thought, was the average size of new units constructed over time has nearly doubled actually since 1950. So it's just every decade has brought with it I suppose, a demand from consumers for bigger and bigger houses. Don't want to have to share bathrooms with your siblings. And all right, and so yeah, the next section here, I'll try to move along quickly, is real estate transactions. Oh, and I'm sorry, I should mention that first section was built using assessor's data from Maricopa and Pinal County. The transactions data we received from Information Market, and I believe Maggie also presented some of the analysis based on that same data set. So again, you can see we have a median sale price in 2019 of around $279,000, and that increased substantially, about 90% since 2012, which is as far back as we have this data. And this chart kind of shows the distribution of transactions. So on the y-axis is the count, the total number of transactions binned into different sale price buckets here. And so you can see here that the median has gone up along with all sectors in the market. There's fewer and fewer homes above 200,000, 250,000 available now compared to just a few years ago. So we'll move on to permit activity. So this just gives us an idea of construction, investment, improvement, and either new construction or improvement into existing properties. And again, kind of following the trend, there's more and more value and improvement being invested year over year since 2010. And finally, this is a related kind of same family of data, but this is after those new construction permits are completed, we have residential completions. So this is data that we collect from all of our member agencies. And you can see there's nearly 28,000 new homes built in 2019. And most of them single family, 67%. And once again, year over year increase in new units constructed, since there's a little dip in 2011, but otherwise steady increase, leveled off a little bit between 2018 and 2019. And then at the very bottom here of the story map, you can load, compare just, again, these very high level trends by city or town. So there's total number of units, sale price, you see now Paradise Valley and Scottsdale are up at the top. The permit value for just for 2017, 2018, sorry. And again, this is we only have the permits data for Maricopa County. And then finally, the number of units constructed. Kind of the cool thing, if you wanted to select just a few cities here, the other charts, then you can compare these other things just for that small selection of cities you looked at, so Phoenix, Mesa, Gilbert here. So I'll move along here just to show you. So these are, again, this is very high level at the Phoenix metro region level. But if you're curious, you want to look at any of these sections at a much more granular level, check out your zip code. And then a lot more detail available here as well. So this is the housing stock tab. And so again, just some of the same information we had here, 2 million units, about 1,900 square feet average, and a little chart here showing, here we differentiate between multifamily and single family. And so you can see, especially in certain areas, more multifamily construction over time. Oh, just going to minimize it. Okay, now I can see that better. Yeah, so we can compare then. Previously, we were looking at the entire MSA. Now we can see the difference between Maricopa and Pinal County. Significantly fewer units and much more new construction, newer housing stock. And of course, then go to a city or town, you have to make a selection here. If we compare a city like Buckeye, for example, almost everything was built since the year 2000. It's a comparison. Look at Mesa with a lot more older housing stock, a lot more multifamily units available. And there are some interesting other things available within Maricopa County. We have information on ownership. So generally, we've seen, go back to the county view, an increase of properties held by owners with a mailing address from out of state. So you can see they've gone from almost 90% in-state owners to 7% less, 83% now, looking back for the last 20 years or so. I'm not going to get into every tab here, but if you like to go to the site, you can check out all sorts of different analytics and compare them. And also, again, by zip code, you can zoom in interactively, select one zip code, check out your neighborhood, check out your parents' neighborhood, whatever.
This is Adam with City of Scottsdale. I've got a quick question on the tab that you were just on.
Sure.
Identified rentals. Were those rentals as classified by the assessor, or was that housing units that?
Yes, that's by the assessor, and you can see here we only have that available for Maricopa County areas. But yes, this is the assessor has a legal class description on their parcel data that denotes whether the property is primary residence or whether it's rental residential.
Thank you.
Yep. Right. Yeah, so I'll quickly move ahead to the sales tab. And so one thing here, again, just like in the housing stock, you can drill down by county, city or town or zip code. But in this data set, we can also drill down by the year too. So right now we're looking at 2019 data. You see the majority of homes are within the $200,000 to $300,000 price range. But go back a few years, again, 2012, which is a lot cheaper. And you can kind of see that trend over time here. So interesting to look across time and just see how the market has shifted upward. I think I'm kind of running out of time, so I'll quickly move over to the residential permits section. And so again, this one also you can select by year and look at the total value developed by year. And another cool thing is you can see the largest developments or the number. So this is number of units permitted in 2018 by development. So you can see Eastmark here is a big player. Go back to 2015, different set of developments. Eastmark was still coming up there. And yeah, we can look at this by either construction, which is this light blue color, or the dark blue are improvement. So if somebody decided to renovate their home or add a new bathroom or something. If you click on this slice, then it'll filter everything else just by the total construction or total improvements dollars. And then finally, this looks pretty similar to the permits tab. Again, it is kind of in the same family of data. This is just further along the process after we know that the units have been completed. And it's, again, so you'll see a lot of the same thing. We have the total number of units built each year. And so this number represents the sum of the multifamily and single family dots here over in this line chart. Again, you can look by year. Seems to have go back, look year by year, see which developments were active at that time, look at the ratio of single family to multifamily, and of course we can look at compare different cities. So I think that's all I have here. So if anyone has any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Thank you for the presentation. Any questions?
This is Adam again with City of Scottsdale. Thank you for the information. Is this a static data set, or is this does this get updated as information gets updated with the county?
Yeah, this will get updated annually. So everything right now is up through 2019, and we will, I guess, wait till the end of the year to update for 2020 so that we have a full year's data that we can compare with the previous. But yeah, we do plan on maintaining this and updating it going forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Hearing none. Appreciate the presentation again. And we will move on to the next agenda item, which is item number 8, census update. Scott will be here to give everyone a census update.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Census 2020 is over. It's all over. October 15th ended up being the final day for responses. The national self-response rate was 67%. Arizona fell just short of that at 64.1%. Maricopa County was actually a little bit above the state, and I just lost my data, so that's cool. Maricopa County was just above the state, and Pinal County was just below the state, and that's just for self-response. What some people are looking at is that those response rates, self-response rates, were higher than they were 10 years ago. That's great news. I think that shows that money well spent by the region for the regional effort and for all the individual member agencies. It was a different census year for a lot of reasons. The biggest one was the ability to respond online, but also the pandemic and with all the different things going on with the census at various levels. I think it is good news that we exceeded our self-response rate from 10 years ago. When you factor in the non-response follow-up, the national total enumeration percentage was 99.9. Every state except for Louisiana was also at 99.9 for total enumeration. Louisiana was down at 99%. I think they had some special circumstances there that hurt them. The Census Bureau also, for that last 0.1%, the Census Bureau has the ability this decade to use administrative records to fill in any gaps. So they can look at like Medicare data, Medicare data, unemployment data, IRS data, I believe, some various data sets like that can be used to fill in the gaps, so that hopefully they will be able to get full enumeration for the entire nation. The last I've heard, they are on track to deliver the state counts to the White House by the end of the year, by December 31st is their deadline. And they are also, the last I've heard, and keep in mind all this stuff keeps changing, they're on track to deliver the redistricting counts to the states by April 1st next year, which would allow them to start doing the public releases of the data sets in spring and summer, and then over the course of the next couple of years. Until something actually happens, they can still change, but that's what they're saying at this point. I think we've also talked a little bit at these committee meetings about the differential privacy and the anonymizing of the final census data below the state level. They are still working on that. We periodically will get some updates from the Census Bureau and from the State Demographer's Office on the changes that they've made to differential privacy to try to increase the accuracy of the data while maintaining the privacy that they're seeking. I don't really have any hard numbers or anything to show you or tell you, but right now we know they're working on that, and they're going to continue working on that up until I guess until they apply the algorithms to the data and start to release it. If we get anything major, anything that we think would be useful to you, we'll send it out in an email, or we'll talk about it at a future PopTac meeting. But at this point, they're doing differential privacy, and they're trying to get it as accurate as possible and as private as possible, and trying to find that balance there. At this point, that's all I have. I can take any questions if anybody has any.
Thank you, Scott. Any questions? Okay. Hearing no questions, appreciate the update.
Thank you.
We will move on to item 9 on the agenda, data collection update, discussing upcoming data collection activities and procedures. We have Peter Burnett here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the PopTech. This is just a real brief update and really more of a thank you for everything. We know that, especially during this, well, we've always asked for data from you guys, even before the pandemic, but we know especially during the pandemic, things have been a little bit more difficult and maybe delayed sometimes. And we really appreciate everyone's effort in still continuing to work from home and work together to be able to help get us the data that we've been requesting. Currently, there are 2 updates that I just wanted to remind you all about that we have out there, and 2 requests that we have out there right now. One is a request for the public employment data for 2020. That data is actually due at the end of this week. If you need more time, feel free to reach out to Christian Gort. He's the one that's been sending that request right now. We understand what's going on. We're willing to work with you on the timing and everything, but that data is real crucial for us to be able to enhance the employer data. The next phase of that will be updating and sending out review, but that won't happen for several months at this point. The other request that we have out right now is for assistance with missing residential completions. Both of these requests, we've received responses back already, and most are in. There are still a few outstanding. That's why I wanted to remind you and take this opportunity to remind you about that. The request for missing residential completions, this is a process that our team uses to, we look at the assessor data and compare it to residential completions and look at build dates to see if there's anything missing, if there's any parcels that don't have completion points on them. And that's how we try to find some of these missing completions. That data we've asked to be returned on November 3rd. Again, we're willing to work with you if you need a little extra time. I know there's been a couple of people that have requested a little bit extra, but that data is real crucial for the population updates that Scott was presenting earlier. And so the state is needing that data sooner than later, but again, we understand if there's delays at this time. But thank you for all your assistance, and that concludes my update. Thank you.
Thank you for that update, Peter. Any questions?
Mr. Chair, can I ask Peter to mention one other thing about the employer database?
Sure.
Update, the new ability to respond to.
Oh yes, thank you, Scott. Thanks for reminding me of that. When we finished the 2019 employer data, we sent out, in the past, we've sent out data for review and said, look at these top 100 and look at these major changes. We still ask for, if we have any questions, we send those out individually to our contacts and PopTech committee members. But we do have a method now to go into the employment viewer and click on a dot that's there, or an employment point, and provide us updates. If you know that an employer should have 1,000 employees instead of 800, we'd love to hear about it, and that's how we're asking you to review and request it. When you run the reports in the employment viewer, you can look at the top 100 employers and see which ones, if we might be missing anything or if there's too much or too little employment. You could also have the ability through the viewer to click on it and point to the map and add missing employers as well. Thank you, Scott, for reminding me about that.
Yeah, you're welcome, Peter. Over the years, we've always appreciated when you guys or your economic development counterparts would let us know that there's something that you noticed on the employment viewer that needed to be updated or changed, and hopefully this will be a lot easier, so you don't have to try to get in touch with us. You can just do it right on the map as soon as you see it, and we can get that fixed even faster. So,
Scott, I should mention that when we sent out the notice in the email that the employer database was finalized, we did send out instructions on how to go in and edit and review and send those edits in.
Very good, thank you. Any other questions? Very good, I appreciate the update. Moving on to item 10, Scheduling for the next meeting. We are currently scheduled for Tuesday, November 17th, 2020 at 10 a.m.
I would expect that meeting to be canceled, but you will hear about it in due time.
Very good. At this time, I would ask for a motion to adjourn.
This is Paul Michaud at Paradise Valley. I'll move to adjourn.
Very good. Do we have a second?
Adam Yaron, City of Scottsdale, second.
We have a motion to adjourn in a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it. Thank you very much, everyone. We are adjourned.
Thank you, everybody.